Now we come to the second question of the DVQ question. This is about the iron steel industry in China. So figure 3a shows the distribution pattern of the iron steel industry in 1949 to 1979. The two different stages. Next one shows the year of establishment of the major iron steel plant and some major city in South China. Last one will show you the iron steel plant A and B and the surrounding environment in Zhamgang in South China. So we can see that for the first one, the map shows you the distribution of the iron steel plant in the two different stages. So stage 1, they are found in this location, and stage B, they are found in another location. Figure 3b shows the location of the iron steel plant and the year of formation. So for the one in Gong is under construction, and we can see some major city in Guangdong. Also the location of A and B iron steel plant. Lastly, show you the aerial photo of the iron steel plant A and B. Now let's see the question. Refer to figure 3a. Contrast the distribution patterns of major iron steel plants in China. So this one asks you to contrast, so means to find out the difference of the location of the iron steel plant. So this question, most of you perform quite well. You can talk about the location correctly. So let's see the location for iron steel plant in the figure. So in the first stage, they are mainly found in the western and central part of China. They are mainly in the inland location. And then for the stage for stage in 1979, they are mainly found in the eastern part and coastal area of China. So most of you can get this point correct. Next one, explain the respective distribution patterns with reference to government policy. So this question, government policy, is the key idea. In the first stage, so in this stage, in the 1949 to 1978, quite a lot of you mentioned about the Go West policy. Which is not correct. Go West policy is in 1999. So it's wrong period. So at that time you can mention is the first to the second 5-year plan. 第一或者第二啦，或者頭幾個嘅5年計劃啦 of China. And at that time, the key reason is for strategic reason to protect the industry from being attacked along the coast, and then for socio-economic reason to speed up the development in the western part of China and provide more jobs for the people there, and to utilize the resources in the inland area. And then for the next one, next period in the 1979 to 1990s, which is the opening up policy. So for the opening up policies at that time, so the government should provide a lot of favorable policy for the industrial development. So at that time, so many of you can mention about the low tax rate or subsidies, etc. But be careful, some of you mentioned the coastal advantages, which is not the government policy at that time. So we not put in the marking scheme. So don't include like reclamation, cooling machine, etc. So we only focus on the government policy itself. So next one about the coastal constraint. So your performance is poor, constraint, some disadvantages 一啲嘅限制啦。So of Plan A. So let's see the location of Plan A. So for Plan A, some of you mentioned that A is a inland. No, it's not so inland. We just argue that it's not waterfront. So not really inland. It's still quite coast, but not as close as B. We don't call it inland, not waterfront or not near river. Not near river. So this is the constraint. So they don't have the water for cooling machine. And then for another constraint is that you can see a lot of tall building here around the, and a lot of settlements and other industries around. So we have facing the keen land use competition. So there are lack of space for expansion. So this is another constraint for Plant A. And then for the advantages for Plan B, I think your performance is good again. So many of you can make use of the location, the waterfront, to mention about the benefit. So many of you know about the coastal location, as well as this picture about the waterfront location. So you can mention about the land for reclamation or cooling machine, etc. So it's quite well developed. Your idea is quite good and able to make use of the data. So one point is also important, there is extensive flatland. Extensive flatland. So the land can use for the space demanding industry. So this point, many of you skip this point, so be careful. So lastly, as about why the industry in Bạc Học Dong was closed. So discuss whether, so please take your stance, appropriate, yes, appropriate, or not appropriate. So why is appropriate or not appropriate decisions? So when you pick your choice, so your choice discuss first and then argue at least 2/3 of your idea. So I want to see your clear standpoint, yes or no. So for yes, please go back to the data on 3B. So look at the idea Bạc Học Dong. The industry is set up in 1957, which has a long history. Which means that why you need to close down, most of the machines there is outdated. They are not functioning well, so they will lead to a series of pollutions that affect the health of the people, or they are not able to produce high quality iron steel products. So that's why you need to close down. So you can use the angle like air pollutions, or they don't have a high quality production of iron steel. In the figure, we can see 2 new iron steel plants. One is in Phòng Thành Cang, which is under construction, and the one in Tràm Cang. So they will cause a direct competition to the one in Bạc Học Dong. So they may have less market share due to the new iron steel plant set up in Tràm Cang and Phòng Thành Cang. So this is some idea you can use to argue. And then for no, this is not appropriate decision, you can argue about the closure will cause some socio-economic impact, like unemployment, etc. So this one will hinder the choice for the people to operate the machine for a few more years. So that's why they need to close. So that's why they want to keep the running of the business instead of close down. So because it causes some negative impact. So that's all for question 3. So for question 4, it's a question about cities. So none of you choose this question. This question is worth trying. If you want to try and want to know about the answer, you can ask me later. Now you can refer to the marking scheme and learn. Finally, let's go to question 5. It's about the irrigation farming in Southern California. So the questions show you about the location of P in California. Many details here. Next question, show you the landscape of place Y, and then a farming method X. Lastly is some socio-economic condition of place P. So this picture show you a lot of useful data. And then 5B show you a lot of the landscape, about the farming landscape in P. Lastly, so 5C is the farming method. And then 5D is about the socio-economic data. So question 5A, so describe and explain the physical constraint. So this question, most of you answer quite well. So you can make use of the data and tell about the constraint. For example, so most of you can tell about the low annual rainfall, high summer temperature that cause the problem of drought in the location because of high evaporation rate. Some of you mentioned that P is lack of flatland. No, it's not correct, because P is located at the flatland, so it's not lack of flatland. And some of you forget to talk about the direction of winter direction. Wind is offshore, dry offshore wind. So will also cause blocked by the mountain. Here we can see a mountain range. So this place is rain shadow. Rain shadow effect. So they cannot receive any moisture for farming. It's quite dry. Next one, we can see the soil here is strongly saline or saline, which is not suitable for farming under strong capillary action. Not many of you can use this term. 無細孔作用. So as a result, this place they have low farm production. Next question. So describe the characteristics of the farm, and you need to quote evidence to support your answers. So the farm characteristics is based on what we have learned before. You can talk about extensive, intensive, high-tech, low-tech, commercial, subsistence, etc. And most importantly, support with evidence. So this farm, first of all, is an extensive farming. Extensive farming. So because we can see a large farm size. And this farm is used high-tech farming because they can use a lot of machine. So machines. And last one, this is not so clear. So this is commercial farming because they can use the road to transport the product to the market. So we call this is a commercial farming. So remember to use your evidence clearly to support your idea. Next one, the farming method. So all of you can get marks is called precision farming. Next one, explain the conducive factor. Conducive we can talk about is important， 一啲必備嘅因素啦，必備嘅原因啦 to adopt farming method X. So you use the table. So in your answer you must tell about the factor clearly. So what are the factor? The first one is capital factor. This place they have high GDP per capita, so they can have enough capital to buy the IT equipment. And then they have labor factor. They are all skilled labor. They can manage the use of iPad, use of GIS, external support, so they have a lot of technical support from the organizer. Next one, they have government factor to provide them subsidies, so they can able to use a lot of capital to buy the IT equipment for their own use. So that's why they can apply the precision farming to raise their farm productions. So remember, when your answers you need to link up with the use of precision farming. Lastly, so the temperature in California is increased, and then precipitation is become more reliable in the future. Variable, it means unpredictable, 不確定. So discuss how the farming method X help the farmer to tackle the physical constraint in the region, to solve the physical constraint in the region. So the physical constraint in your answer, you must mention that should be drought, water shortage. So for your measure, each of your measures should link up with how they work. So they will need to collect data. So make use of IT equipment. For example, like iPads to collect the data, or use the satellite image to collect the data. And then they will use the scientific way. So this one is a keyword in DC exam, scientific analyze. 啲科學嘅方法啦 to collect the data and analyze the data. So they want to prevent over irrigation and salinization, the two problems we learned before in figure 5a. And then they apply the most suitable farming method, like they use the drip irrigation, or they can use about the drought resistant crops to reduce the damage caused by the lack of water. So in your answer you must able to address how they can use the IT equipment to raise the farm production and able to address the problem in the region. So make use of the figure. Last reminder, this question discuss how is one-sided answer. No need standpoint. Just explain how, why the method can help to solve the problem. So that's all for question 5.